They were moments away from a life-changing verdict. Two people on opposite sides of a bitter courtroom battle. But when a stray dog walked in, everything stopped. And what he did next, no one judge, jury, or even God above could have seen it coming. This story is about fate, about timing, and how one animal, who had no voice of his own, somehow managed to speak louder than anyone else in that courtroom. The courtroom smelled like old paper and tension. It was the kind of place where words held more weight than people. A place where lives could change with a sentence. Not the kind in a book, but the kind that came from a judge's mouth. Maya sat quietly on the left side of the courtroom, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She hadn't said a word in the last 40 minutes. Her lawyer, a soft-spoken public defender named Lena, had spoken on her behalf, but it hadn't helped much. On the other side of the room, Tyler sat like he owned it. He leaned back in his chair, one ankle crossed over a knee, wearing a watch that cost more than Maya made in a month. His suit was perfectly tailored. His smile, polite, controlled, fake. To anyone who didn't know better, he looked like a loving pet owner, just fighting to be reunited with his dog. But Maya knew the truth. So did her hands, shaking silently in her lap. So did the bruise under her ribs that had never fully healed. Bella, the golden retriever in question, wasn't just a dog. She was everything. She'd come into Maya's life 3 years ago, when Maya was at her lowest, fresh out of the hospital, living in a friend's spare room, trying to recover from the years she'd spent locked in a relationship that nearly killed her, emotionally, and more than once, physically. The shelter had warned her. Bella was skittish. She didn't like loud noises. She flinched when anyone moved too fast. Probably came from a bad situation, they said. Maya had smiled gently. Me too. It hadn't taken long for the two of them to bond. Bella would curl beside Maya on the floor of that tiny apartment, resting her head on Maya's chest, while Maya cried herself to sleep. When nightmares came, Bella would nudge her awake with her cold nose, refusing to leave her side until Maya whispered, "It's okay, girl. I'm here." But now, Maya was the one whispering that to herself. Tyler had found out about Bella 6 months ago, through a mutual friend who posted a photo online. Suddenly, he was filing paperwork, claiming Bella was his. That Maya had taken the dog when she left. That Bella had been a shared asset. It was all lies. Tyler had never cared about Bella. He hadn't even liked dogs. Once, when Bella accidentally knocked over a glass in the kitchen, Tyler had raised his hand. Maya remembered the way Bella shrunk back, tail tucked between her legs, the same way Maya had when the shouting started. Now, he was using Bella as a weapon, not because he wanted her, but because he wanted Maya to suffer, and it was working. The court case had stretched over 3 painful days. Tyler had brought in co-workers who swore he'd always talked about his love for Bella. He had printed emails from Maya, cherry-picked to paint her as unstable. He even claimed she had dog-napped Bella out of spite. And the judge, well, the judge hadn't exactly looked sympathetic. He was a tall man with a dry voice and tired eyes. The kind of judge who'd seen too many messy domestic cases and didn't want to hear another sob story. He wanted facts, ownership records, vet bills. Maya had all of those, but none of them mattered, because Tyler's lawyers were louder, slicker. They had storyboards, charts, legal jargon. All Maya had was the truth, and the truth didn't always win in court. Outside, the city moved on like nothing was happening. People walked past the courthouse, sipping lattes, checking their phones, laughing. No one noticed the small, silent war taking place inside those walls, except for one creature, the dog. Every morning, Maya passed him as she climbed the courthouse steps. He was thin, ribs visible beneath his scruffy coat, gray around the muzzle, though he wasn't old, just worn out. No one knew where he came from. He just showed up one day and stayed. He didn't bark, didn't beg. He just watched. The security guards had tried to shoo him away a few times, but eventually, they gave up. He wasn't hurting anyone. On the first day, Maya had noticed him but kept walking. On the second, she paused. By the third, she gave him half of her sandwich. The dog had taken it gently, his eyes locked on hers. There was something there, a stillness, a sadness, a knowing. Maya didn't say anything to him, but she started calling him Chance, her head, because that's what he felt like. A chance that someone, or something, still saw her. By the 4th day of the trial, the courtroom felt like a slow-burning furnace. Not because of heat, but because of pressure. The air was thick with it. Words had been exchanged. Legal documents passed back and forth. Arguments laid out, repeated, dissected. But the truth still hung in the background, unseen, ignored. Tyler's lawyers walked with confidence, the kind that came from money and power. They were polished, practiced, Every objection came at just the right time. Every word chosen not for clarity, but for control. They weren't trying to tell a story. They were trying to win. Maya didn't have that luxury. Lena, her lawyer, was doing her best. She worked long hours and cared deeply, but she was juggling too many cases, underpaid, overworked, and in this courtroom outmatched. Every time Maya tried to speak, it felt like she had to swallow glass first. Her throat was dry, her palms were damp, her voice trembled. And Tyler watched her like he was still in control, because he was. In this room, he held the cards, and he knew it. Maya had tried to prepare. She had spent nights going through photos, Bella as a puppy in her lap, curled up at the end of her bed, licking peanut butter off her hand, while she laughed through tears. She brought Bella's adoption papers, vet records, even a short video of Bella responding to Maya's voice from across a crowded park. But Tyler's lawyers twisted everything. They said Bella only listened because Tyler had trained her first. They claimed Maya's documents were incomplete or unverifiable. They painted her as an emotional woman desperate to hold on to the only relationship she had left. It wasn't just a court case. It was psychological warfare, and Maya was losing. She could see it in the way the judge looked at her, detached, tired, like he'd already made up his mind. Sometimes, in those long silences between testimonies and objections, Maya would glance toward the courtroom door, not because she expected anyone to walk in and save her. No one was coming, but because she remembered who was waiting just outside. Chance. Every morning since the hearing started, he'd been there, curled under the same bare patch of sidewalk near the courthouse steps, watching. Rain, wind, cold. He didn't move. She didn't know why he stayed, or why he never approached anyone else. But every time she looked into his eyes, she felt understood. She had started bringing small pieces of food for him, a crust of bread, a slice of ham, and every time she knelt to offer it, he would look up, not hungry, but grateful. It was the only kindness she felt all day. That Thursday morning, when Maya stepped out of the subway and walked up the courthouse steps, Chance wasn't in his usual spot. Her stomach sank. She stopped and scanned the area, her eyes darting from a newsstand to the trash bins. No dog. Something about his absence felt heavier than it should have, like a signal, a warning. The court session started on time. The judge's gavel came down like a thunderclap. Final day of hearings, he said. Closing arguments to be presented. Maya's hands shook as she gathered her notes. She didn't have much, just a short, handwritten statement she'd worked on the night before. She was going to read it aloud, but when she stood, Tyler's lawyer objected before she said a word. Your Honor, we move to strike the defendant's statement unless verified by documentation. The judge sighed. Let her speak. And so she did. Her voice cracked halfway through. She talked about Bella, about the nights when she couldn't breathe and Bella laid on her chest, about how the dog would place a paw on her heart during panic attacks, like she could feel it racing, about how, when Maya had first brought her home, Bella wouldn't come out from under the couch for 3 days, until Maya laid down beside her and whispered, You're safe now. For a moment, the courtroom was silent. Lena wiped at her eyes. Even the stenographer looked up, but Tyler, he just smirked. And the judge, he tapped his pen, jotted a note, looked up. No further questions, he said. That was it, the final words. Maya sat down slowly, her body hollow, not from losing, but from knowing that the truth had been spoken and might still not be enough. Court adjourned for lunch. 1 hour. Maya slipped out through the heavy wooden doors, barely noticing the light drizzle that had started. She walked down the steps slowly, her feet heavy with dread, and there he was, Chance, back in his usual place, wet, shivering, but there. Relief surged through her like heat. She knelt, pressing her forehead to his, whispering, You came back. Chance licked her cheek once, and then stood, not sat, not curled up, stood, and he didn't stay by the door. He walked slow, steady, toward the courthouse entrance. Maya watched in disbelief as the stray Chance climbed the courthouse steps with a calmness that didn't match the nerves twisting in her stomach. People turned to look, some stepped aside. A few chuckled nervously. Where's that going? Someone whispered. But Chance didn't stop. He didn't bark. He didn't look left or right. He walked straight through the doors, head low, tail relaxed, not wagging, but alert. Maya stood frozen. That wasn't normal dog behavior. Not for a stray, not for a courtroom. And yet something about the moment felt surreal, like it was supposed to happen. Ma'am, is this your dog? A security guard asked her, already reaching for his walkie-talkie. No, Maya replied quickly, but he's not dangerous. She wasn't sure why she said that. She had no proof, no idea what he might do inside, but she felt it. deep in her gut. Chance wasn't there to hurt anyone. He was there for a reason. Inside the courtroom, the judge had just returned from break. The bailiff had barely closed the doors when murmurs began rippling through the benches. And then the dog appeared. He walked slowly down the aisle, step by step, past the reporters, past the clerk, eyes forward, until he reached the table where Maya sat. And then he stopped. There was a long, heavy silence. The judge stared over his glasses. Whose dog is this? No one answered. Chance looked up at Maya, then slowly sat down beside her. Not by the door, not in the corner, right beside her chair, like he belonged there the entire time. Maya's hand trembled as she lowered it, resting it gently on his back. His fur was wet, cold, but his body was still. A soft gasp came from the jury box. He's protecting her, someone whispered. Tyler stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She planned this. This is manipulation. But Chance didn't even glance his way. The judge banged the gavel. Order. The room fell silent again. Maya didn't speak. She couldn't. Her heart was pounding so loud it echoed in her ears. And then, something even stranger happened. As the judge began summarizing the arguments for the case, Chance growled, low, deep, just once, not loud enough to startle, but just enough to make Tyler stop mid-sentence. The judge paused, looked up. Tyler cleared his throat. This is absurd. Your Honor, clearly the animal is dangerous. He hasn't moved, Maya whispered. Her voice was soft, but steady. He's sitting beside me. That's all he's done. The judge looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time since the trial began, she met his eyes, and for once, didn't look away. Do you know this dog? He asked. Maya shook her head. Not really. He's been outside every day. I started feeding him, but I've never brought him in. I didn't even know he would come in here. The judge looked down at Chance. The dog didn't flinch, didn't blink. Bailiff, the judge said slowly, let the animal stay for now, as long as he remains calm. Tyler's lawyer objected again. This is a breach of courtroom procedure. Sustained. The judge interrupted. But I'll allow it unless the animal causes disruption. Chance didn't move. And for the next 10 minutes, while closing arguments were made, the courtroom felt different. Not just because of the dog, but because of what he represented. Maya sat taller. Her voice was stronger when she spoke. Her lawyer's words were more confident. And Tyler, for the first time, he looked unsure. He kept glancing at Chance, like waiting for the dog to leap or bark. But Chance just sat there, silent, watchful, unshaken. When Maya's final words were spoken, she rested her hand on Chance's back again. He leaned into her gently, and something broke open in the room. The tension, the fear, the pressure. It cracked, not loudly, but enough. Enough to make people sit up straighter, to make the judge furrow his brow, to make the truth finally feel visible. And then came the moment no one expected. Tyler's phone buzzed in his pocket, a quiet vibration. He ignored it. Then again, he looked down. The judge noticed. Is there an issue, Mr. Dunbar? Tyler shook his head. No, Your Honor. Apologies. But the bailiff had already stepped forward. Judge, he said softly, handing over a piece of paper from his own headset communication. We just received an anonymous report. Animal Services confirmed this dog matches the description of one reported missing from a local shelter a few months ago. The judge raised an eyebrow, and the bailiff continued. They scanned him when he was first brought in. No chip, but they logged behavior notes. Said he was only responsive to female voices, displayed signs of past trauma, and had an unusual pattern of guarding behavior toward women, showing signs of distress. He paused, then added, they called him Chance. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The judge sat back, folded his hands. Well, he said slowly, that's certainly compelling. Tyler tried to speak again, but no one was listening anymore. Maya couldn't stop shaking, not from fear anymore, but from something else. Hope. It was like a crack had finally formed in the concrete wall she'd been pounding against for months, maybe years. The courtroom wasn't silent anymore. Not exactly. There was a low buzz, a sense that something was changing in real time, and everyone knew it but didn't quite understand why. Chance lay down at Maya's feet, not out of boredom, but peace, as if his job was done for now. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench. Ms. Ramirez, he said, using her name properly for the first time all trial. I'd like you to clarify something for me. Maya sat up. Yes, Your Honor. You said earlier you adopted Bella from a shelter. Did that shelter happen to be in the same district as the one that originally housed this dog? Maya blinked. Yes, it was the downtown location, but it was years ago. I don't think. I'm not implying the two dogs are connected, he said, but their behavioral notes are remarkably similar. Guarding behavior, bonding with trauma victims. It's unusual. He looked at her more intently now. Tell me about Bella, he said. What kind of dog is she really? Maya swallowed hard, and then she told him everything. She told the courtroom about the night she escaped her home, barefoot, bruised, terrified, how she walked into the shelter the next morning because she didn't know what else to do, how Bella had been the only dog who didn't bark or wag when she passed by, just watched her, quiet, still, how Bella had slowly, gently walked to the edge of the kennel and rested her nose on the bars until Maya finally reached out to touch her. She didn't choose me because I was fun, Maya said. She chose me because I was broken. She saw it, and she stayed with me. The judge nodded slowly. And Mr. Dunbar, he said, turning his attention to Tyler, who stood fidgeting now. When exactly did you say you became attached to the dog in question? Tyler's voice was tight, defensive. Bella was with both of us. She followed me around too, slept by my side. It's not like she was exclusive to Maya. The judge raised a brow, and yet she was registered under her name. She took her to all the vet visits, paid for the adoption fee. Isn't that right? Tyler didn't answer. His lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, the issue isn't the paperwork. The issue is that Mr. Dunbar is alleging theft of property. The dog is legally disputed, and enough. The judge cut in. There was steel in his voice now, and then he turned back to Maya. Ms. Ramirez, did your dog ever react this way, the way Chance has? Guarding you? Reading your stress? Maya nodded, tears forming again. Yes, every panic attack. Every night I woke up shaking. She'd put her head on my chest. She never left my side. Chance raised his head then, as if responding to Maya's voice. He didn't move, just lifted his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. The judge noticed. Everyone did. That was the moment people stopped thinking of Chance as just a stray. He wasn't a dog that wandered in. He was a witness. And maybe, just maybe, he was a truth teller too. The judge turned his gaze back to Tyler. Mr. Dunbar, I have one more question for you, he said, and I advise you to answer it carefully. Tyler stiffened. Yes, Your Honor. Has there been any documented evidence or past reports of aggression on your part toward either Ms. Ramirez or the dog? Tyler's lawyer cut in again, trying to object, but the judge held up a hand. I've heard enough objections. This is a simple yes or no. Tyler hesitated. Then no, there are no reports. The judge looked toward the bailiff. I'd like a recess, he said, and I'd like those shelter records from both dogs reviewed side by side. If this animal's behavior mirrors that of the disputed pet, we may be dealing with more than just coincidence. As the gavel banged again, Chance finally moved. He stood up, walked slowly toward the bench, and then, in front of the judge, he sat again. This time not beside Maya, but facing the authority in the room. Not growling, not begging, just present, calm, like he knew where the real weight of the truth needed to land. The courtroom was dismissed for recess, but no one really moved. People lingered, whispered. Outside in the hall, Maya stood by the vending machines, clutching a bottle of water she hadn't opened. Chance sat beside her, again without command. A female clerk passed by. It's like he's her shadow, she murmured. Maya turned. I didn't ask for this. I didn't even want to bring him inside. He just came. The clerk nodded. Maybe he didn't come for you, she said gently. Maybe he came for justice. The courtroom reconvened 45 minutes later, but something had changed. The energy in the room was no longer dominated by Tyler's loud legal team, or the pressure Maya felt in her chest every time she took the witness stand. There was stillness now, and weight, as if people sensed something real was unfolding, something that had nothing to do with paperwork or arguments. When the judge walked in again, his face looked more focused than before, sharper. He wasn't just seeing people anymore. He was seeing truths. Behind him, the clerk handed him a folder, thicker now. It contained shelter notes, vet files, behavioral records on both Bella and Chance. The judge scanned the papers quickly, but his eyes stopped on one particular page. He read, paused, then read it again. When he finally looked up, he didn't speak right away. His gaze shifted, not to the lawyers, not to Maya or Tyler, but to Chance. The dog was sitting in the exact same spot near Maya's chair. He hadn't barked once, hadn't wandered, but he hadn't taken his eyes off Tyler either. Let the record show, the judge finally said, that Chance, the stray dog that entered this courtroom earlier today, exhibits nearly identical behavior to that documented in Bella's shelter intake forms. Both dogs were noted for extreme loyalty, anxiety recognition, and protective instincts toward female handlers who'd experienced trauma. He tapped the file gently with his index finger. Interestingly, he added, Bella's notes reference a refusal to interact with male adopters during her first 2 weeks in the shelter. She bonded only with one individual, Maya Ramirez. Maya felt her breath catch, and then the judge turned his gaze directly to Tyler. Mr. Dunbar, I've reviewed your claims, and I have to ask again, why is there no adoption paperwork in your name? No vet records, no photos where you are the one with the dog, without Maya present. Tyler clenched his jaw. I didn't think I needed to keep those things, he muttered. The judge leaned back in his chair. That's unfortunate, he said flatly, because your argument relies solely on the emotional testimony that the dog was more bonded to you. But today, we've seen something else entirely. He looked again at Chance. This dog, who has no official role in this case, no leash, no training collar, has stayed at Maya's side since the moment he entered the room. He has guarded her, watched you, and calmed only when she calmed. Silence, heavy, thick, and then the judge leaned forward again. Sometimes, actions speak louder than testimony. Tyler's lawyer tried to interrupt. Your Honor, with all due respect, we cannot determine legal ownership based on a stray animal's behavior. There are protocols, procedures, and we've followed them, the judge said sharply. We've reviewed every piece of paper your client submitted, and do you know what's missing? He held up the file. Love, protection, consistency, everything that makes a pet more than property. Tyler was red now, visibly sweating. He stood up. This is ridiculous. It's a dog. I can buy 10 more just like it. Gasps. He froze. Even his lawyer closed her eyes for a second, as if silently begging him to stop talking. The judge's tone dropped an octave. Did you just say you could buy more? Tyler looked like he wanted to take the words back, but they hung in the air, poisonous and sharp. Maya closed her eyes, not because she was afraid, but because she finally saw what everyone else had missed for so long. This wasn't just about Bella. It was about who had really loved her, and who saw her as replaceable. Just then, Chance stood up again, walked, not toward Maya this time, but toward the judge. He didn't bark, didn't whimper. He simply placed both front paws on the edge of the judge's bench and looked him in the eyes. The entire courtroom froze. The judge stared back at him, stunned. It was only a moment, but it landed like a thunderclap, because that moment said more than any closing argument ever could. Chance stepped back down, returned to Maya's side. Saturday, like nothing had happened. The judge set the file aside. I believe I have all I need, he said quietly. He looked at Maya. You've carried a burden that no one should have had to carry alone. And though this courtroom isn't a place of miracles, today feels like one. He turned to the clerk. Please prepare my ruling. Custody of the dog, Bella, is awarded to Maya Ramirez with immediate effect. The room didn't erupt in applause, but the wave of relief that washed over it was deafening all the same. Tyler's face twisted in fury, but he knew it was over. Maya didn't cry. Not then. She simply reached down and placed a gentle hand on Chance's head. Thank you, she whispered, because she knew. He wasn't just a stray. He was a witness, a protector, a quiet guardian who had walked in when she needed him most and changed everything. The courtroom was still. It was hard to believe that the battle was over. After all those days of uncertainty, the endless struggle, the fear of losing Bella, the crushing weight of Tyler's accusations, it was finally done. Maya didn't move for a long time after the judge made his ruling. She just sat there, hands resting in her lap, staring ahead. For a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. She could hear the soft rustle of papers, the faint hum of voices, but it all felt distant. Everything felt distant. The reality of what had just happened hadn't quite hit her. It wasn't just the legal victory that stunned her. It was the sudden emptiness that came with it. After all those years of running, of fighting to stay afloat, of clawing her way out of the darkness, it was like the heavy fog that had clouded her mind was finally lifting. And there, in the center of it all, was Chance. He was the one constant, the one thing that had always been there. Even when the world had felt like it was crumbling, when the gavel came down, Maya's first instinct was to reach down and touch his soft fur. She didn't even think about it. It was like an automatic response. Her hand just moved without hesitation, drawn to him the way a drowning person might reach for a lifeline. He had saved her once, and now he had helped her save Bella. Chance didn't need any words. He didn't need praise. He simply leaned into her touch, a steady reminder that he was still here, still guarding her, still watching over her. For a moment, Maya realized she had never truly been alone. She had never really understood that before. But now, as the world around her began to return to normal, lawyers packing up, witnesses shuffling out, the judge leaving the bench, Maya's thoughts shifted. She thought about what it had taken to get to this point. Not just the court case, Not just the endless days of testimony, but the years before. The years when she had been with Tyler. The years of silence, of fear, of walking on eggshells, of hiding bruises and scars, both physical and emotional, from everyone who might notice. The nights she spent curled up on the couch, Bella nestled beside her, listening to the heavy silence in their apartment, the kind of silence that didn't comfort, but suffocated. It was in those moments that Maya had realized something. Bella had been her anchor, but Chance, he was different. Chance wasn't just an anchor, he was a force, a sign that things could be different, that her life didn't have to be defined by her past. He had stepped into her life, uninvited, and now he was a part of the story, a part of her recovery. As Maya stood up from her seat and gathered her things, Chance rose with her. His presence was steady, like the calm after a storm. He didn't rush her, didn't tug on his leash. He simply walked alongside her, like he had always been a part of her journey. They moved through the hallway together, Maya, Chance, and Bella, back to the place they had started, to the corner outside the courthouse, where the stray dog had first appeared. But this time, there was no uncertainty, no fear, just a quiet understanding. Maya walked slowly, taking in the fresh air as they exited the building. The sound of footsteps echoed in the empty hallway behind them, but it was different now. The weight that had pressed on her chest for so long was gone. "Let's go home," Maya whispered. Chance gave a soft, almost inaudible growl, as if in agreement. It had been a long journey, a painful one, but it was finally over, or so she thought. The drive home felt surreal. Maya kept her hands firmly on the steering wheel, her fingers lightly gripping it, as if she feared that at any moment, everything might slip away. The roads were the same. The familiar streets passed by, one after another. The trees, the houses, nothing had changed, except her. She glanced at Bella in the rearview mirror. The little dog was curled up, her eyes half closed, but she always seemed to know when Maya needed her most. Bella's calm presence was a reassurance in the quiet aftermath. But Chance, he was different. His steady, watchful eyes never left Maya, even from the back seat. He wasn't lying down like Bella. No, he was sitting up, his gaze locked on her, as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. His golden coat caught the light as it streamed through the window, but his presence was deeper than that. Maya had never seen a dog like him before. His silence wasn't just comfort, it was strength, an anchor in the turbulent waters of her past. They finally pulled into the driveway. Maya cut the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the front door of her home. She hadn't realized until now how much it had all felt like a cage. The life she had built since leaving Tyler had been small, suffocating at times. But now, looking at it, she realized how much she had reclaimed. She hadn't been living, she'd merely been surviving. Now it was different. Maya opened the door and stepped out. Bella followed her with a quick bounce, and Chance slowly padded behind her, tail swaying in a quiet rhythm. It was as though he was sensing the shift within her, as though he knew that Maya was finally ready to let go of the fear that had been holding her back. The house was quiet, too quiet. It had always felt like an empty shell, even though it was technically hers. Tyler's absence had left a deep mark on the walls, in the silence, but Maya hadn't realized how much she'd been holding on to the past until now, until today. Chance stopped at the threshold of the door, watching her, like he was waiting for her to move, for her to take the first step into something new, something better. And finally she did. Maya walked into the living room, Bella following close behind. She went to the couch, where she had spent so many lonely nights, her mind racing with fear. The sofa felt different now, softer, less intimidating. Maybe it was just the way Chance was standing by the door, like he had come to fill a space that had been vacant for so long. Chance didn't immediately join her on the couch, as Bella did. No, Chance remained vigilant, pacing slowly, checking every corner of the room. His eyes seemed to sweep the space, like he was assessing it for danger, looking for something. Maya could feel his protective gaze. It wasn't like Bella, who simply snuggled in for comfort. Chance was on alert, his instincts sharper than she had ever realized. She sat back on the couch, taking a long, deep breath. She felt as though she could finally breathe again. The air felt different. The weight that had once pressed on her chest was gone. But it wasn't just the court case that had lifted that burden. It was Chance. He had opened something in her, a truth she hadn't been willing to see before. Maya had always thought of Bella as her savior, as the one who had pulled her out of the darkness after leaving Tyler. But now, Maya realized that it had been Chance who had awakened something deeper inside her. It wasn't just about saving Bella, it was about saving herself. Chance had arrived at a time when she was at her lowest, when she didn't even know what she was fighting for anymore. His presence in the courtroom that day had been a turning point. He had been the catalyst that had shifted the judge's decision, the moment that had broken through all the lies Tyler had built around him. Chance had been the quiet force, the unspoken truth, and it had been him, more than anyone, who had truly saved her. Her thoughts were interrupted by Bella jumping onto the couch, curling up against her side. Bella gave a soft sigh, as though she was content with the world finally being right again. Maya stroked her gently, a smile tugging at her lips. Then she looked at Chance. He was still standing by the door, unmoving, and that's when it hit her. This dog, this stray who had wandered into her life, was more than just an animal. He was a symbol of everything she had lost, and everything she had the power to reclaim. He was a reminder that, no matter how far she'd fallen, there was always a way back. But Maya wasn't just thankful for him as a protector. She was thankful for him as a guide. He had shown her the courage to stand up for herself when she felt like there was no one left to fight for her. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was about taking back her power, reclaiming the life she had almost forgotten how to live. Chance had reminded her that love wasn't just about ownership or possession. It was about trust. It was about showing up day after day, even when the world seemed too hard to face. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she had control, not because of the judge's ruling, not because she had won the case, but because she had found a part of herself again, and Chance had helped her find it. It wasn't just the case that had shifted for Maya. It was everything. Over the next few weeks, she found herself looking at the world through a different lens. The weight of her past still lingered, but it wasn't as crushing as before. She no longer lived in fear of Tyler's shadow looming over her every step. She wasn't looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next attack, whether physical or emotional. The days seemed to stretch out, filled with a quiet kind of peace she hadn't experienced in years. But it wasn't just about being free from Tyler. It was more profound than that. Chance had given her the space to breathe. The first time she truly realized how much he had impacted her was on a lazy Sunday morning. Maya woke up earlier than usual, the sun's warm light filtering through the blinds. Bella was curled up beside her on the bed, but Chance was already awake. He was sitting by the window, his posture alert, but calm, his golden fur glowing in the morning light. His eyes weren't just scanning the room like they had before. They were relaxed, at ease. He had finally found his place in the world, and so had she. Maya sat up slowly, feeling the absence of the usual weight in her chest. It was as if something had quietly shifted overnight. She felt the change, though she couldn't quite put it into words. She hadn't realized just how much she had been holding on to until now. "Good morning," she whispered softly to Chance. The dog's ears perked up. He turned his head, and in that moment, she saw the trust in his eyes. He didn't need words. He never did. The connection they shared didn't require anything more than that silent understanding between them. For the first time in years, Maya felt whole. It wasn't just that she had won the case. It was that she had reclaimed herself. The fear that had once dictated her every decision, that had kept her in a constant state of survival, was fading. Little by little, it was dissolving, until it became a distant memory. And it was Chance who had taught her that. Maya began to embrace her newfound sense of freedom. She started going on walks without feeling like she was always looking over her shoulder. She started to meet new people slowly, but surely, growing her confidence as she realized that the world wasn't out to get her. There was kindness to be found. Bella, of course, was her loyal companion, and the two of them formed the perfect pair. Bella would happily greet neighbors, curl up next to Maya while she worked, and was a constant reminder of how far Maya had come. But Chance, with his quiet presence, was more than just a protector. He was her silent partner in every step she took toward healing. He was the one who stood beside her, offering her strength without words. And every day, Maya saw him differently. He wasn't just a stray dog who had wandered into her life that day. He was the one who had helped her believe in herself again. But it wasn't just Maya who was changing. Bella had changed, too. In the days following the trial, Maya noticed a subtle shift in Bella's behavior. She wasn't just Maya's anchor anymore. She was also a bridge, connecting Maya to the world around her. Where once Bella had been her constant companion, Bella now seemed to take on a new role, a connector. She was more playful, more curious about the world beyond their front door. Bella would run in circles, darting around Chance, barking happily as he watched her with an amused glance. It was clear that both dogs were becoming part of a new, healthier dynamic in Maya's life. And the more Maya watched them together, the more she realized something important. Chance had given her the courage to move forward, but Bella had always been her reason to keep going. Together, they made a perfect team. One morning, as Maya took Chance and Bella to the park, something unexpected happened. As they approached the entrance, a man called out to her. Maya didn't recognize him at first, but when he stepped closer, she realized it was a local news reporter. He had heard about the case, about the stray dog who had walked into the courtroom, and he wanted to hear Maya's side of the story. At first, Maya hesitated. She had never wanted the spotlight. She wasn't one to draw attention to herself. But as she stood there, with Chance and Bella by her side, she realized something. Her story was bigger than her. It was about the power of second chances, the way one small act of courage could change everything. It was about the people who fought for the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. It was about animals like Chance, who came into the world not by accident, but by fate, bringing light into the darkest corners of people's lives. So she agreed. For the first time, Maya was ready to share her story, not just for herself, but for Bella, for Chance, and for anyone who needed to hear it. As the reporter began asking her questions, Maya spoke from the heart. She talked about her escape from Tyler, about Bella's constant support, and about the stranger who had turned out to be more than a stray dog. It was a simple story, a story of survival, love, and the unexpected twist that changed everything. And through it all, Maya kept her eyes on Chance. He stood next to her, silent as ever, but his presence was loud. The reporter couldn't help but notice the bond between them, the way Chance had stood by her side when no one else had. In that moment, Maya realized that Chance wasn't just a dog. He was a hero, not in the traditional sense, not in the way people expected heroes to look. He wasn't wearing a cape. He wasn't performing acts of superhuman strength. He was simply there, a reminder that sometimes the heroes in our lives are the quiet ones, the ones who show up day after day and quietly change the world in ways that are beyond measure. And as the interview ended and the reporter shook her hand, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For the first time, Maya wasn't just surviving, she was living, and for that, she had Chance to thank. Maya's life had shifted in ways she could never have predicted. It had been months since the trial, and every day felt like a small victory. But it wasn't the legal battle that had changed her life. It was the journey of healing she had begun long before the verdict was read. That trial had been the final step, the tipping point, the thing that had allowed her to finally let go of her past. Chance, that quiet, golden dog who had wandered into the courtroom as a stray, was now an inseparable part of her life. But it wasn't just about how much he had helped her survive. It was about how much he had helped her truly live. Maya had always carried guilt with her. Guilt over leaving her old life behind. Guilt over not speaking up sooner. Guilt over being too scared to confront the man who had hurt her. Every day had felt like a struggle to reconcile the woman she used to be with the woman she was becoming. But Chance had taken that guilt and replaced it with something else. Love. For the first time, Maya wasn't ashamed of her past. She wasn't afraid of the person she had been. She had done what she had to do to survive, and now she was free to move forward. She could embrace her story, her truth, without apology, and that freedom was a gift that Chance had given her. The bond they shared had deepened, and it wasn't just about the emotional support Chance provided. It was the way he had come into her life at just the right moment, when she needed him most. He hadn't been part of the plan. He hadn't been part of the life she had imagined for herself, but in every way that mattered, Chance had filled the emptiness she didn't even know she had. One evening, as the sun began to set, Maya found herself sitting on the porch with Chance by her side. Bella was running around the yard, her playful barks filling the air. It was a peaceful evening, one of those rare moments where everything felt right. Maya stared out at the horizon, her mind drifting back to that first day in court. She remembered how lost she had felt, how powerless, walking through those doors. She remembered the way Tyler had smirked, the way he thought he could take everything from her. But now, sitting there in the calm of her home, with Bella and Chance by her side, Maya realized how far she had come. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into that courtroom. She was stronger now. She was braver. She had found her voice, and she had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength wasn't about what you could fight for. It was about what you could protect. Chance had shown her that, and he had given her something else. Hope. Hope for a future that was free of fear. Hope for a future where she could finally breathe without holding her breath. Hope that even in the darkest moments, there was always the possibility of something better, something unexpected. And it wasn't just hope for herself. It was hope for Bella, who had been her constant companion through everything. And it was hope for Chance, the dog who had changed her life in ways she couldn't even begin to explain. As the light faded, Maya looked down at Chance, who was now resting his head on her lap. He had been so patient with her, waiting for her to find herself, and in that moment, she knew that he had done more than just change her life. He had saved it, but Maya wasn't alone in this journey. She wasn't the only one who had been changed by Chance's presence. Bella, too, had grown. Over the months, Maya had noticed that Bella's behavior had shifted in subtle ways. She was no longer just a quiet comfort in Maya's life. She was a joyful, energetic companion, the playful spark that balanced out Chance's calm presence. The two dogs had formed a bond of their own, and it wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about the three of them, their little family. Maya smiled softly as she petted Chance's fur. Bella ran over and jumped into her lap, eager for affection. The two dogs had brought a new energy into her life, a sense of belonging and love she had never known before. She thought back to the days when she had first escaped from Tyler, the nights she had spent alone, curled up on the couch with Bella, wondering if things would ever get better. Back then, it had been hard to imagine a life beyond the chaos. But now, it wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living. Maya looked at Chance once more, the dog who had saved her, who had shown her how to embrace the future with open arms. He wasn't just a stray anymore. He was her family, her hero, and in many ways, he had given her the courage to become the person she was meant to be. She wasn't broken anymore. She was whole. As the stars began to twinkle above, Maya felt a sense of peace she had never thought possible. The past no longer defined her, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of gratitude for everything that had led her to this moment. She was finally free, free to be who she was meant to be, free to live without fear, and all of that she owed to Chance, the dog who had changed everything. The day of the final hearing had arrived. It had been a long and grueling journey. Maya had spent months preparing for this day, but no amount of preparation could calm the knots in her stomach. She stood in front of the courthouse, her coat wrapped tightly around her, the cool breeze brushing against her face. Bella was by her side, her tail wagging with the energy only a dog could possess. But it was Chance who kept Maya steady, his presence a quiet reassurance. The courtroom that morning was packed. The air was thick with tension. The judge's gavel was about to come down on what would be the most important decision of Maya's life. And this time, Tyler wasn't just fighting for control over a dog. He was fighting to take away everything Maya had fought for, the peace she had worked so hard to build, the life she was finally able to live without fear. Maya could feel the weight of the past pressing against her chest. She could see Tyler sitting at the other side of the courtroom, his smug expression betraying nothing of the damage he had caused. He had always been so sure of himself, so certain that he could control the people around him. But this time, he wasn't in control. This time, Maya was ready. Chance was seated beside her in the courtroom, his head resting gently on her lap, as if he knew how important this moment was. Bella, ever watchful, sat by her side, occasionally nudging her hand for reassurance. The trio formed an inseparable bond, a family that no one could break. The judge entered the room, and the proceedings began. Maya sat straight-backed, focused on the task at hand. Her lawyer, a kind woman with a quiet strength, addressed the judge with respect, outlining the case once more. The evidence was clear. Maya had taken care of Bella. She had rescued her, nurtured her, and given her the love and care she deserved. Bella was more than a pet to Maya. She was a lifeline. She was her protector, her comfort, her anchor. But Tyler's legal team wasn't going down without a fight. They presented their case with precision, trying to paint Maya as an unfit owner, an unstable woman who had no right to keep a dog. They argued that Maya's past, her history with Tyler, disqualified her from having any legal claim to Bella. Maya felt the sting of their words. They were cold, clinical, like they were reading off a list of reasons why she didn't deserve happiness. But she wasn't listening to them anymore. She was listening to the quiet, steady breath of Chance by her side, the soft thud of Bella's tail against the floor. And then it happened. The courtroom fell silent as Tyler's attorney called in their last witness. It was an unexpected move, one that caught Maya off guard. The woman entered the courtroom, looking disheveled and nervous. Maya recognized her immediately. It was the woman who had found Chance. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The woman spoke of Chance's history, recounting how she had discovered him wandering the streets in poor condition, starving and scared. She described how she had taken him in, cared for him for weeks, before deciding that he was ready to be adopted. But when she had reached out to the animal shelter, she had found out that he had already been claimed. Maya's heart raced as the woman continued, her words sinking in like daggers. It was clear that the woman had no idea who Chance truly was, or what he had become. But what really shook Maya was the revelation that Chance had once belonged to a family, an abusive one, a family that had used him, neglected him, and left him to fend for himself when they no longer had use for him. Maya felt a sickening wave of anger rise within her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was the last thing she had expected. She had never once asked about Chance's past. It didn't matter. He was hers now. He had been hers since the moment he walked into her life. The woman paused, looking down at Chance, who had lifted his head at the sound of his name. His eyes were calm, almost knowing. Maya could see the silent bond between them, the connection that ran deeper than words. And in that moment she knew, this wasn't just a battle for a dog, it was a battle for her life. Maya stood up, her body trembling, but her voice unwavering. "Your Honor," she began, her eyes never leaving the woman who had just spoken. "This dog, this hero sitting right here next to me, has saved my life in more ways than I can count. I didn't need to know his past to know the person he is today. He is a symbol of survival. He is my protector, my friend, and the reason I have the courage to stand here today." She turned to the judge, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm not asking for this court to give me anything I don't deserve. I'm asking you to see what I see. This dog has given me the strength to reclaim my life. He's not just an animal, he's my family." The courtroom remained silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Maya's chest tightened as she fought back tears, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not now. Chance's presence, the way he sat there, calm and steady, was everything. He wasn't just a stray dog anymore. He was the cornerstone of her freedom. He was her proof that change was possible, that even the most broken pieces of the past could be transformed into something beautiful. Maya's heart pounded as she waited for the judge's response. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, the judge spoke. "I believe we've seen enough," the judge said quietly. "I will make my decision after a short recess." As the judge stepped out of the courtroom, Maya felt her heart settle for the first time that day. The uncertainty that had plagued her for so long, about herself, about her future, about Bella and Chance, was beginning to fade. Whatever happened next, she knew she had done everything she could. She had fought for what mattered most, and with Chance by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. The days that followed the trial were a blur. Maya hardly slept, her mind racing with thoughts of the courtroom. The moment Chance had stood beside her, the weight of the judge's silence, the tension in the air. But when the final verdict came down, it wasn't what she had expected. The judge, having taken everything into consideration, the testimony, the evidence, the undeniable bond between Maya and her dogs, rendered his decision. He ruled in Maya's favor. Bella was hers to keep. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a life-altering moment. Maya had won her freedom, but she had also won the recognition of something deeper, the unwavering love of the dogs who had saved her. It felt like the past was finally slipping away, replaced by a future that was filled with the possibility of true peace. For the first time in a long time, Maya allowed herself to breathe without fear. Maya's gratitude wasn't just for the judge's ruling. It was for everything Chance had done for her, not just as a dog, but as a symbol of her strength. His quiet courage, his resilience in the face of abandonment and neglect, had mirrored her own. She remembered the days when she had felt hopeless, when she had wondered if she would ever truly escape the darkness of her past. But as she looked at Chance and Bella by her side, she knew that healing wasn't just about surviving. It was about finding the strength to live, something Chance had taught her without ever speaking a word. The morning after the verdict, Maya stood on her porch with both dogs by her side. The sun was rising over the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the yard. Bella raced around, chasing butterflies and wagging her tail, while Chance stood calmly by Maya's feet, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. Maya reached down to stroke his fur, a smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. Chance looked up at her, his eyes warm, as if he understood. He had been there for her from the beginning, when no one else had been. He had been there when she had been at her lowest, and he had been there when she had learned to rise again. And now, they were here together, standing in the light of a new day. The journey that had started so uncertainly, both for Maya and for Chance, had brought them to this moment. They had fought battles, faced their fears, and overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But through it all, they had found each other. They had found family in the most unlikely of places. For Maya, the courtroom had been more than just a place of judgment. It had been a place where she had confronted her past and embraced her future. It had been a place where she realized that she didn't have to fight alone anymore. She had her dogs, her anchors, her protectors, her reason to keep going. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Maya sat down on the porch, Chance curling up next to her while Bella rested at her feet. They were her family now, and in that moment, with everything she had been through, everything she had survived, Maya knew that nothing could ever take that away from her. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more incredible animal stories like this one. And don't forget to share it with someone who might need a little reminder of the power of love and loyalty. Maya and Chance's journey shows us that sometimes the most unexpected heroes come into our lives when we need them the most. If you're ready for more heartwarming tales of how animals can change lives, watch our next video. Thanks for being a part of this journey.